Hey everybody, my next guest is a writer and comedian who has appeared on everything from The Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Late Night with Conan O'Brien to Comedy Central and VH1 Stand Up Stand Up. He also hosted and co-wrote The Straight Dope on A&E, and his Funny Muscle 3-book series continues to remain on the Amazon bestsellers list for theories of humor. You could also find the Funny Muscle series on funnymuscle.com. Here he is, folks, the one and only Mike Lukas. Woo!
The crowd is going crazy. This is nice. I can't believe you have a live audience in your basement. This is a wonderful touch.
They're all going crazy for you. Yeah, you hear them? They're cheering away.
And that's just my invitation for you to edit that in later. You know,
and that will be in there later. You can bet on that.
Right, now you got boom, 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 boom. Get all that. Get the queen back in.
Headbang a little bit. It's going on right now as we talk.
Yeah, I don't have the hair to do it with, but what I have is I somehow you know how if you're missing a limb, you have like a ghost limb. You know, sometimes you still feel the old limb that you had, or if you're missing a finger. I have ghost hair or whatever they call that, phantom hair. It's phantom hair. Like
you can feel the hair when you're doing it.
I feel it. Oh yeah, I feel bangs dripping on my forehead, but I have nothing. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've sometimes with my one bald spot I got back here, I get the phantom hair. I feel like it's I feel like it's all there.
My friend Tom Rhodes calls that his yarmulke. He's got his skin yarmulke that's up there.
I love Tom Rhodes. Shout out to Tom Rhodes, great guy.
Oh, Tom's one of my brothers. He's one of the comedy brothers. He was like he's younger than me, but he was older than me in the comedy world. And he was a tough older brother, man. He would do stuff like, I remember Rhodes, we were working together and he was like, so Mike, how much you making this week? And I told him, I was like, whatever it was, like $300 or whatever. I was like, why? How much you making a week? He's like, it's none of your goddamn business. I go, but I just told you, why did you ask me if it's none of your business? He goes, because I knew you would tell me.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I became friends with him when I was working in Atlanta for the Falcons, and I was always a fan of him. So I reached out because he said he was in Atlanta, and I asked him wanted to come to the game, and then we just kind of hit it off and worked with him on a few things, and then yeah, he's been on the podcast.
Oh yeah, oh great, yeah. I consider him a brother, man. He's I love him, man. Tom Rhodes, and he's such a prolific writer. He's got his notebook that he carries with him, and he's got fastidious writing. He's just like like he writes something down, and you can actually read it afterwards. It's crazy.
He's got good penmanship.
He's got great penmanship. As a writer, he's got excellent penmanship. I give him an A+. Tom Rhodes. We've talked of you, and enough of Tom.
When you're writing like that, when you get a idea these days, do you still write it down like on the napkin, or are you now into the phone and this technology caught up with you yet?
Yeah, I got the phone. I've got my my iPhone. I just got an iPhone 13 or no 14. I got an iPhone 14, and I think they're up to iPhone 97. It's like I don't know which more, the iPhone or the Fast and Furious franchise. I'm not sure which has more. They're competing with each other. I don't know if you know that, but that's where they get them. They're competing with each other. You got another movie? We got another phone. How do you like that? And yeah, but I take my notes on here, and then I take them from my notepad on my phone, and I put them on my laptop or my desktop, and then I print them out, and then I don't look at any of it. I just do it all from memory.
I know, isn't that crazy? I do the same thing, man. Like if I'm driving or something, I'll start saying things into my phone, or if I get an idea, I write it down. But then when I actually write, I have the time to write, I very rarely go back to the notes. It's all from, like you said, from the memory. It's crazy. And then I'll find the notes weeks later. I'm like, oh man, I forgot that.
That was a pretty good joke. I should have done something with that. You know what I've been doing, Don? I've been doing a joke a day. I for the last week or a month and almost 2 months now. I've been doing a joke every day. My podcast partner and I do a podcast called the Funny Muscle Podcast, which is based on the books that I've written. And our target market is newer comedians who are just trying to get into the business, and they're trying to sort of figure out how to wrestle this big alligator called comedy. And yeah, Chris Stifler and I have been doing that since January. What we challenge each other to do is to have a joke a day, and so then every week we talk to each other and we just we pitch our bits to each other. That's what I was trying to say. And so it's really nice to have a writing partner and somebody who you can sort of throw stuff up against the wall with, and then they can tell you if you're in the, yeah, you know how it is with other comics. If they smile, you've doing, you like, it's like you killed.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
that was good. Oh, I got a, that was good. Whoa,
That
if
means
you get
it's
a
gonna
laugh,
kill. Yeah.
right? If I get a laugh, then that means no one's gonna laugh at it because a comedian thought it was funny, and they only like dark shit, and audiences aren't really like drawn to that as much. So if it's a back of the room joke, you got to throw that away because I'm not really. You do those too, but you do those at the open mics.
Nice. With the joke a day, is there any rules or because I mean with like just the news cycle, I feel like there's fodder for jokes every single day, but do you stay away from politics or any of that stuff and just try to write, just a straight joke, or is there no rules in your joke a day?
There's
Um,
no stinking rules. There's nothing. We just go, and well, I'm not really a political guy. I'm not really into like current events. I stay clear of that stuff unless it's something big and I want to just talk to the crowd initially when I first get up there. If something is big happening, like if the election's going on or there's a sports event in town or something like that, I'll always address that first, just with some throwaway stuff. But in terms of my writing, what we're really working on, Don, we have like in my books, I talk about having a comedy lens. And when you have a comedy lens, it's like your brand, it's like your voice. And I've just sort of named it and claimed it as a comedy lens. And so the goal of every new comic in my mind is to figure out what your comedy lens is, first of all, so that you can begin to really have an original take on whatever topic you happen to tackle. So you and I could both do a bit on dogs or a bit on candy, but each one of us is going to have a different take on them because your lens is different than my lens. And if you're a seasoned comedian, you might not even know what your lens is yet, but you know organically where you're going to go with a topic, and then you turn into a premise, obviously, by adding your emotional take on it. You say, instead of dogs, it's like now I'm nervous that my dog is really almost too smart for his own good because I'm afraid he's going to learn how to speak, and if he learns how to speak, he's going to tell on me. I've done things in front of my dog I don't want anyone knowing, and I did it assuming he would never have English as a second language, but now I'm not so sure. So, right. So that's my take on dogs, and you might have a completely different take on dogs. But it's like when the Stones and the Beatles do a love song, we know the difference between the two things, even though the topic is sort of trite.
Dogs, those pot dogs. They train them to sniff out your weed. That's their job. Their one job is to sniff out your weed. So what do you do if they sniff out your weed? How are you going to talk yourself out of that? Oh, he must smell my dog, officer. Oh, good boy. Well, then your dog has marijuana. I knew it. He's been lethargic. He bought an Xbox.
No, that's great. That's a great comparison when you think about it musically, because there's a million songs about love and love songs and breakup and heartbreak and all that stuff, and it's the same thing with any art form. And like you said, with comedy, we could all have a different take on it. And I love the idea of the comedy lens because I think we all view the world differently, and you could see that, but is that something like for you? Is that something you turn off and on, or is the comedy lens always seeing the world through that lens?
Well, I think the comedy lens is based so completely on who I am. My comedy lens, I'm the clumsy aspie hole. I finally figured out that I've never been officially diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum, but I've been accused of it multiple times,
Right.
mostly by my wife. And she's been diagnosed as ADHD, and as during her sort of research on her own mental wiring, she was like, you know who you remind me of, Mike? People, Asperger's, people who have the Asperger, which is like a functional autism. They don't really use that anymore, but which is unfortunate because I really related to it. So my I was very unaware of the fact. I always thought I was neurotypical. I thought I was wired like a normal person, so called, but I wasn't. And so that's one of the clues that you're Asperger's, is that you think the way you do it is right. So I'm like, she's like, check. once again. And so because you're unaware of that, you tend to be sort of emotionally vacant in a lot of cases. A lot of empathy is absent. And so you become what I call an aspie hole, whereas you're unaware of the fact that like, I don't know why they're so upset. I just told them the truth. It's like, well, because you said it in a way that was very insulting. Well, no, I'm sorry that the truth is insulting to you. Maybe you need to take a truth pill or whatever. And then, but for me, because I have two kids, I have two teenage kids, my aspie hole nature always backfires on me because my kids are way smarter than me and they're more modern than me and they're more woke than me. And so I'm always just constantly, the bar I set up high, I'm never able to go over it. So my lens is the clumsy aspie hole. And so, part of what my comedy journey is whenever I look at anything that I'm about to make fun of, I always look at it from that point of view because it really reflects who I am as a person, and all the best bits I've ever written, I've backtracked and reverse engineered them. And it's that lens, it's that same lens. It's like that dude thinks he knows what he's talking about, but he really doesn't. Oh God, that's funny. So yeah, so I don't think you put it away. I think in answer to your question and a long answer to your question, I think you carry it with you. It's like Jerry Seinfeld is always making a big deal out of nothing. He never says that, but that's what he does. And even when he's in conversation, when he's doing comics in cars, drinking coffee or whatever it is, he's still doing it. You just watch him do it, and he can't help it. Same with Rodney Dangerfield. I can't get no respect. Now he was somebody who outwardly talked about his comedy lens, and
Right.
it never left him, and we always loved him for it because he was self-deprecating, and he was like, no matter what happens, Rodney's going to take a big shit on himself.
I'm ugly, I'm telling you. My proctologist, he stuck his finger in my mouth.
So yeah, I think it goes with you once you find a really good lens and it's organically fits you. I don't think you run away from it. I think you embrace it because it's what makes you more memorable because you're vulnerable with it. So people relate to it more. So you're relatable, you're memorable because you're more relatable. You're more original because it really reflects who you are, and therefore it makes you funnier. It makes people understand who you are, like the third season in a sitcom. Like the reason why Kramer's so funny is the seasons go along is because we know who he is, and before he even opens his mouth, we get what he's gonna do.
Right. Yeah. Jack Benny had that too. When
Yes.
all he could just do is look at the audience and do this, and the audience was with him. Yeah, and I think too, like with Rodney and Seinfeld, another great thing that they had in common was I think they were both wordsmiths as well, like the craft of the joke. I mean, you look at both of those two examples, man. You break down their jokes. Like I know Seinfeld's big on the word, like this word's funnier than that word, and he'd mix it up. And I think Rodney's just I don't know if he put that much thoughts into the words, but he always found the right words. You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like he was just
if you look
brilliant.
at their jokes, they don't have one wasted word. If you take one word out, the joke doesn't work, and if you add one word in, the rhythm doesn't work anymore. They're incredible wordsmiths. Same with Carlin. Same with even Pryor, someone who was more of a storyteller. He's a wordsmith. He had his jam down.
It's when you see those guys at that level, and the brilliance of the craftsmanship of the jokes, the funny, the act outs, just their demeanor, who they were. Like you look at, Rodney had a certain, way about him on stage that's iconic, as well as his fast-paced jokes. And then, you see again these newer comics that are heavily inspired by that and trying to emulate that, but might not be there yet. And that's what's important about books like yours, finding the funny muscle. Um, how do you get a newbie to find that pathway to greatness? And do you see it early on, or is it something that needs to be evolved?
Well, everything needs to be evolved, of course, and this is such a difficult thing. I say that comedians are five-tool players, right? We are five-tool players. We are a writer, we are a director, we are a performer, we are a traveler because we have to go from place to place, and you have to get good at that. And we are a business person. So we have to book our gigs. We have to get a following. We have to sell our merchandise, and we have to expand our career and grow our career. So that's a five-tool player that you're talking about. That if you're going to be any good at this career, you have to focus on all five of those aspects of yourself. And the books, man, a lot of comics aren't book learners. I hesitate to tell you that the book is going to be the answer for you, because some people don't like book learning. What they do is they watch comedy and they reverse engineer it, and they do it, organically. And that's fine. If that works for you, that's great. I'm a book learner, and I liked having a methodology. And then when I sit down in front of my computer for an hour during the day when I don't have stage time, I can set myself up for my stage time later. But it's all about stage time, as you know. You can write all day long, but if you don't have a place and an audience to execute your ideas, then you're just, you're basically masturbating, comically masturbating, and until you break that fourth, that idea that you're with other people, and performing for them. But yeah, how do you get the newbie? I coach. I do one-on-one coaching. And the first thing I do with somebody is I get them to figure out what their comedy lens is. And then what I do, and you do that by having them do some deep sort of research on who they are. And I have 4 questions that they ask you that are in the book, and they answer those, and then we cherry pick those for the nouns and adjectives that describe them, and then we use that to sort of begin to piece together a lens that's appropriate for who they are. And then what I do is I introduce them to the humor blueprint, which is basically like, premise, setup, punchline, but it's got a bunch of other elements added to it. And then when they begin to understand the structure of a joke, which is, you're going to bring about the idea that we're going to talk about, you're going to misdirect the audience into thinking it's going to go in a normal direction, and then you're going to switcheroo them with a different heightened idea that also satisfies that setup, but in a way they weren't expecting. And then they go, I get it. Oh, I laugh. And then that's where the laugh comes from. And the way they do that in my books, they have 36 heightening devices, humor heightening devices, things like extension, where like if this happens, then why not that? Things like contrast, if they do it this way in New York, but they do it that way in LA. Things like cut forward to and cut back to, cut forward to the date after it's over, cut back to when I first asked you out. There's all sorts of heightening devices that you can use, and I teach a newer comedian how to use those and how other comics use them and how other comics use a combination of those humor heightening devices. That's the real brilliant comics will use a contrast where they'll say, my wife does it like this, but I do it like that. But while they're doing that, they'll overstate the obvious, and they'll also use sarcasm. So they're using all these heightening devices in combination with each other. So it's brilliant. And when you break it down, I break it down like I'm a football announcer trying to break down the catch in the end zone. That's how much of a nerd I am, Don. I love this shit.
Yeah.
And so with someone who's new, I try to introduce them to all those ideas of how that works. And then, for instance, I teach comedy at the Dallas Comedy Club, and so I have my a level 2 class coming up on Sunday. So that's the first thing I'm going to teach them is how to write a joke. Because once they understand that terminology, then we can begin to work with watching other comedians, and we can break down how they're doing their premises, how they're doing their setups and their misdirection, and how they're doing their punchlines. And it's complicated as shit, right?
It's complicated, but like you said, if you love it, it's fun, man.
Right.
And I just think it's awesome. I think the challenge of writing a joke and writing a joke a day or something like that along those lines is fun and challenging at the same time. And
Yeah.
I agree. A lot of people in general, but comedians might not like to read. But I think what's good about this book is that it's easy to navigate and it's easy to find things. So if you have a question and you're like, how to sign up at an open mic? Oh, I can find it right here. Or making
Yeah.
a cold crowd laugh, and then you
That's
could,
yeah, book 3, flexing your funny muscle.
yeah.
That's sort of like how to deliver the material. The first book is finding your funny muscle, and that's sort of the methodology. It sort of breaks down that methodology. The second book is fine tuning your funny muscle, and that sort of goes through how to practice this methodology, and it goes through all the humor heightening devices one at a time on the same premise. So I take this idea that my teen daughter sleeps in on weekends, and I don't like it. So then I apply those 36 humor heightening devices to that premise over and over again, so you can see how each one works. And I also give examples of pro comics and how they use them and how they use them in conjunction with each other. And then the third book, what you're holding, is the Flexing Your Funny Muscles. And that's how to deliver this material. And that's sort of a real practical guideline in how to become a comedian and to use your methodology out in the world.
That's awesome. I love it. I love, everything about these books and what you're doing. And I also, I'm always trying to learn and I think you could always, everyone could always learn. You never stop learning. And I think once you think you can, then you're hopeless. I think you could always learn.
And what I always tell comics that are more experienced, like there's a lot of stuff in these books that you might look at and go, oh, I already know that. True. But if you don't know what your comedy lens is off the bat, if you can't say to me what your lens is, I'm the blah blah guy or I'm the blee blee girl. If you can't say that to me clearly and you know that automatically, then this book would be helpful to you. If you don't know how to write a joke, if say like you're going straight from your premises to your act outs, well, you're missing the whole fun of stand-up comedy, which is that misdirection. There's a whole level that's what I used to do before I wrote the books. I was kind of cheating a little bit. I was cutting straight to the frosting, and I wasn't giving them any of the cake.
Right. Yeah.
and people would call me out on that. I had the pit bull of comedy,
Bobby Slayton.
He busted my balls. He was like, "You got to tell some jokes, kid," and he was right. And I'm embarrassed to say it, but Bobby's a friend of mine, so it was said with love. But you end up taking shortcuts when you don't understand the methodology. And so sometimes the books will give you that. And then, like anything, when you learn, like say a tennis swing or a golf swing, when you're learning it, you can read that in a book and then you can put it into play on the thing. But until you get it into muscle memory where you're not thinking about it at all, it's no good to you. But it helps to have the methodology to get yourself into muscle memory.
Right on. Now with the lenses, and who you are. So let's say my lens is the disheveled, aging, aging guy. There's a lot of me out there. How would you say I could distinguish? Yeah, I know we're all individuals and stuff like that, but if let's just say I'm just starting out, how would I distinguish myself from the other guy who, is the same, same vibe?
Well, right now, like that would be a horrible lens for you because all that lens wouldn't tell me anything about you that I couldn't tell by just looking at you. I can see your gray beard, and I know you're an old fucker. So, like that lens isn't helpful. And I only say that with love because I had two lenses that did the same thing for me. My first lens ever was the pale guy from Florida.
Right.
And it was like, dude, you're in Florida and your skin is so pale, you're translucent. I think they can figure that out without you telling them that or without you having that as your lens. And my second one was the tall, bald comic. I did it again. I did the same thing. Well,
Right.
there's a lot of tall, bald comics, so it didn't differentiate me from anyone. But the clumsy ass hole now is something very original and different, and it makes it gives me a unique take on all my things. Someone like you. We would have to answer those questions. We would have to go in and answer a whole bunch of those questions, those 4 questions, and we would have to cherry pick it and figure it out. But already I can tell that you have a sarcasm to you. You have a bit of a New York tone to your voice, so there's a bit of a East Coast sarcasm to you. So I think that might be in your lens. But there's a lot of East Coast sarcastic things. So we'd have to find out something more personal about you. Are you a divorced person? Are you a married person? Are you a father? Are you somebody who is a doctor by day and not by night? Are you, we have
Right.
more personal about you so that we can begin, you might be the sarcastic storyteller, you might be the East Coast douchebag. We might, I've lived in the East Coast. That wouldn't differentiate you from a lot of people. So we'd have to give you
Right. Exactly. There's a lot of us.
specific. Said as a Midwestern guy who's surrounded by sarcastic dumbasses. So yeah.
What do you think about when they say like the old adage of it takes 5 years to really find your voice?
Yep.
Is that you believe that? So it takes like 5 years to kind of find your lens?
Well, I don't think it takes 5 years to find your lens. I think it takes 5 years for you to implement your lens, for you to begin to tap into who it is and then have your material reflect that lens. Because that's what I teach anyone who I'm coaching is the first thing you're trying to do is you're trying to have 5 minutes of good material. But that 5 minutes isn't just funny. That 5 minutes has to be this is my third year of the sitcom introduction, so that we know who this guy is or that who this woman is, because then they're going to be more likely to laugh at you. They're going to go, "Oh, I get who Don Sill is. He's this guy. He's the East Coast douchebag. I get it." And everything he does is going to come back to that, man. And again, that's not a very good lens, because it doesn't narrow you down as much, because there could be a bunch of people who that could apply to. But when we find out more about who you are personally, we can begin to add that into that lens. And I think that when you're first starting out, your journey to getting to your voice, that you're talking about the first three tools of the five tool player. You're talking about the writing, you're talking about the performing, and you're talking about the directing, because directing also involves theme, it involves set list. And so you're saying it takes 5 years to master those first three parts. Absolutely. You might be a good joke writer, but if you don't know how to deliver that joke yet, you're lost. And if you don't know how to put that together into a 5-minute set that reflects who you are, you're also lost. So that's what takes the 5 years, I think.
Right, exactly.
All of it together. Yeah.
I also, there's so much to talk about when it comes to the art of stand-up comedy. Comedy choices, premise choices. Do you want to be the political comedian? Do you want to be the Seinfeld type of kind of what do you call it?
Criminologist.
Yeah, and just kind of observing the world.
Yeah, observationist. Yeah.
I guess that's a self-discovery thing. You can't just set out and be like, I want to be I want to be an observationalist when you really are kind of a storyteller. Or, I mean,
that's what I talk about in the third book, the flexing your funny muscle. Part of it is your style. A comedy style is something that you're talking about, and your lens, it sort of is your take on the world. Your style is how you execute that take to the world. And so your style is yeah, absolutely. You have to figure out, do I do one-liners? Am I somebody who does a lot of act outs? There's a lot of people that I coach that don't like to do act outs, if you can believe that. I'm like, oh my God, that's the heart and blood of my act is me being a goofball. I take you to the place that I just talked about. My God, if we don't go there, what I'm ripping you off, And but some people don't like that, people that might be a more like, Jerry Seinfeld doesn't do a whole lot of act outs, but he does some. Even Jerry Seinfeld does a few act outs. When he does the cow with the leather. Let me in the house. I'm dressed in leather. I'm gonna ruin it.
Right.
That's his act out.
When it's raining, do cows go up to the farmhouse? Let us in. We're all wearing leather. Open the door. We're gonna ruin the whole outfit here. Is it suede? I am suede. The whole thing is suede. I can't have this clean. That's all I got.
So, but yeah, that's part of the journey, I think, is figuring out those first three things, are the first three things that you got to figure out is how do I write a joke and that works for me. How do I translate the ideas I have? And that's what you're trying to do. You're saying, I've got a gem of an idea. Like my daughter oversleeps on the weekends and I don't like it. So that's my gem of my idea. So the gem is like, okay, well, I want to compare that to to sort of scare her into being how I want her to be, which is like kind of more grown up and responsible. I'm going to do a contrast between what it was like in the old days and what it was like now. So I might say, my daughter oversleeps on the weekend and my teen daughter oversleeps on the weekend, and I don't like that at all. So I told her, hey, honey, in the old days, when kids were your age, even on the weekends, they'd have to wake up early before the sun came up to milk the cows and gather the eggs and farm the crops. And so, she said to me, Dad, well, in the olden days, life expectancy was 55, so you'd already be dead. Right. So that's a contrast. They did like this, her age was like this, my age was like that. And so and that backfires, like the clumsy Aspie hole. I try to set up a bar that for her, and it backfires on me. And so when you write a joke, you have to take that gem of an idea, and then you have to sort of outline it into more of a structure. So that I gave you my premise, which is my daughter oversleeps on the weekend, and I don't like it. So now I've given you the topic, which is oversleeping, and I've given you the premise, which is my attitude towards it, which is I don't like the thing. And then I've set up a contrast, which is what I decided I was going to do for this joke, the heightening device I was going to use. And then I executed it with the two things, with my daughter talking, with a little bit of an act out, and with some sarcasm and overstating the obvious. So when you break it down like that, it's they say when you dissect a frog, you kill the frog and no one gives a shit, and it's the same with when you dissect comedy. It's the same thing. That's what I think Mark Twain was talking about, when you break down how people write and how people do comedy. But the way I look at it is, when you break down how something works, you can then begin to use that methodology in a slow motion sort of way, and then you can speed it up until it becomes muscle memory. And that's how you learn how to play the piano. That's how you learn how to play the guitar. That's how you learn to swing a golf club or a tennis club or a tennis racket. If you're swinging the whole tennis club, you're doing something wrong. That's why you need a book to learn how to do it. See,
there you go.
Bed? Michael. Oh, you look good. Thanks, Bed. It's pretty early. You look good, too. Oh, Michael, I love the way you slept all over me last night. Oh, your body felt so good. I know, Bet. I was on top of you for like 5 hours. I could have lasted longer. I know you could have. Sorry about the drool.
What do you think about, I think what a lot of young comics or newer comics fall into a lot of times is they want to be edgy and dirty right out of the gates. I think that's a big mistake. I think when I see a new person doing dirty comedy or edgy comedy, I think sometimes it falls way flat. Sometimes it could be borderline, again, it's a comedy show, but sometimes it could be offensive and things like that because they're trying to push the envelope, but they're not there. The jokes aren't there. What's your advice to young comics who want to go dirty right out of the gates?
Well, if you want to work, you probably don't want to go dirty, because no one's going to have you as a MC or an opener or even a middle act if you're dirty, because no one wants to follow that. You've trashed the crowd, and now the crowd expects it, and now everyone who follows you after that on the bill has to at least acknowledge the fact that there's dirtiness that's been exposed. And most headliners, if they're dirty at all, they want clean before them, because they want to be the ones that are exposing the dirty material to the crowd. So it really works against you if you're going to try to start out that way. What I always say is it's low-hanging fruit. Dirty material is low-hanging fruit. So if you want to be seen as a clever comedian, being dirty isn't the way to go in the beginning. Now, I'll say this: there's some very clever dirty comics. You could argue Dave Attell is dirty, and he's incredibly clever, and he's one of the, I would argue, one of the best comedians in the business working. But he's not funny because he's dirty. That's not why Dave Attell is funny.
Right, exactly.
He just happens to be a funny guy who happens to be dirty. And that's the difference. When you're depending on the shock of the dirty nature of your act to get the laugh, you're not being clever. Dave Attell does not count on the shock of his dirtiness to get his laughs. He's counting on the cleverness of his twists and his surprises to get his laughs. And he's just a gross dude. He's just a dirty dude. He's just a fucking, he's hardcore, man. I love him. He's one of my favorts, but
yeah, he's a Long Island guy like me.
Yeah, dude, he's a New Yorker, man. So and you guys are very hard on the sleeve, man,
I can speak for every woman in here. There is no romantic way to fist someone. Even if you were on a cruise ship, the sun is setting, you just had a delicious buffet, and now it's vicious fisting.
And guys like Dave Attell, I think, is what a lot of these new comics aspire to be, but they're not Dave Attell,
Well, you're imitating his words that are dirty, but you're not imitating the craftsmanship that he's showing. If you watch his latest special on Netflix, the dude's a craftsman. The dude he's using multiple heightening devices and just popping them out and playing these games. I call them frog banks, where frog isn't funny and a bank's not funny, but when you combine a frog and a bank together and get a frog bank, it's like a cartoon. It becomes funny. That now instead of dollars, you're cashing in flies and spiders. Now instead of a security guard is the bullfrog that's got the big belly and and instead of a gun, he's got his tongue that's whatever. But now the frog bank's funny. So that's the game that people play. And Dave Attell finds these frog banks all over the place, and he's playing them, these combination worlds that are coming together, and that's his craftsmanship. And if you're missing that part of it and you're only thinking that he's funny because he's dirty, then you're not watching Dave Attell, man. The guy's brilliant.
That's perfectly said.
Let's get to it. I watch a lot of television, reality TVs. Hoarders, do you watch the show? You do? I can't stop watching it because I can't find my remote under a pile of dead cats. Huh? Some of these write themselves.
Now, you very successful comedian as well. I mean, you've been on the Tonight Show and been on the late night shows. You toured the country, Second City Improv. I mean, you've checked all the boxes throughout your career. How long of a journey, and first of all, do you consider that success, and and what is success for a comedian?
No comedian ever considers anything they've done successful. They consider the thing that they haven't done yet as a success, and it never stops. If I was doing movies and I was a sitcom star, I'd be like, yeah, well, how come I didn't do the stadium yet? Bill Burr did a stadium. Why can't I do a stadium? And again, it's a constant rise that you're doing. I hit the level where you're not a household name yet, but you've done the things. And what happened to me was a bunch of different things happened to me. I got tired of the business. I got tired of LA. My mental wiring was not such that I was enjoying the meetings and the nerve-wracking journey of gathering with executives and trying to pitch your ideas. That level of it was not fun for me at all. I have social anxiety, and I have a lot of I'm an Aspie hole, so it was very difficult to lose control over all that level of it, and it hit me where I was like, I don't like this at all. But that's not why I stopped. I just had an extra drink and I just gutted forward and tried still. But what really froze me was I kind of cherry picked all my material to do those TV spots you're talking about. And then I had no material left. And so I had to sort of reinvent myself material wise. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to get the same level that by the time I got on TV, I'd been doing comedy for 8 to 10 years. So I had worked on those bits for 8 to 10 years. And now they're like, okay, in the next 8 to 10 weeks, we need you to have the same amount of material at the same level. And I was like, I got to be honest, I don't know how to do that.
We were living together for about 2 years, and I got to be honest, it was really tough to leave her. Well, mostly because I hate moving. It gets down to that sometimes, Look, honey, it's just not working out between us, You cheated on me and you lied about it. Nothing I do is ever good enough for you. Why don't I just do the easy thing, get my stuff together, get out of your life? I'm going to get my dishes and plates, wrap them up in newspapers, pack them up in boxes. I'm going to get some change of address forms, get a rental truck, and this sofa bed's coming with me. Shoot, look, we can work this out.
And the other thing is I had 2 children and I was traveling a lot. And so I kept, I'd come home and I like, kids, it's me, Dad. And my kids would be, remind us. And I'd be like, I'm the guy. Does that mean Dad? Does that mean guest? No, it means I'm your father. And so I just for 10 years, I stopped. I retired and I became a writer. And that's when I wrote the books. That's when I created the podcast. That's when I created the funnymuscle.com website with the content and mike-lukas.com, the blog site. And I started working at Dallas Comedy Club. And so now my kids are old enough now where they're like, Dad, get the hell out of the house. We're tired of seeing you.
They want you to go back out.
So they want me to go back out and get some gigs. So that's what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. Now, reading through the book, I saw in the pro code, the Mark Maron story. When I just want you to please just go into that a little
My
further
God,
about Mark Maron, the great Mark Maron, and
Mark Maron is such a prolific comic. He's one of these guys that just, is a writer, and he writes and writes, and he's got so much material. And so I was opening for him in Chicago at Zany's, and I was a young punk, and I was the first one up, and I was the last one to leave. And so Mark would go up there, and he would do, like, honest to God, like an hour and a half, maybe, sometimes 2 hours. And no, it was by Thursday night, I was sick of it. And so I basically handed him the keys, and I just left. And you don't do that. It's not that you don't do that to Mark Maron. You don't do that to anybody. Like, you don't do that to the headliner, because then he was stuck having to close the show himself, which is exactly what I had planned on having happen. But I got chewed out by the owner, and he was like, "Dude, you don't do that. You can't." I go, "But yeah, but he's doing 2 hours." He's like, "It doesn't matter. It's his show." And I was like, "I know, but God damn it." He's like, "Someday you'll have a show and you'll know what it's like." And I was like, "Oh shit." So I apologized to Mark, and I was like, "Man, I'm really sorry." I go, "That was my bad." I go, I bolted."
Would you say that is it taboo for, like, to go long like that? Because I always hear,
Yeah,
you kind of hear that it is sometimes, but
it's hard to say, because who am I to say Mark Maron did something taboo? Mark Maron was the headliner. It was his show. That's between him and the owner. That's not my business. And so as a guy on the show, my job was to do my 15 minutes up front, introduce the middle act, and then introduce Mark, and then close the show at the end. That was my job. My opinion doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And I thought it did, and that's where I was wrong. And then I also thought that it was okay to not be a professional opener. And I was the house MC, so my job was to close the show. But at that point I was like, I took it personally that Maron was doing over. Now, is that a kind of a dick move to do 2 hours? Well, if you looked at the crowd was getting tired, and they were, in a lot of cases, they might have been happy with just 90 minutes of Mark Maron.
right,
I don't know. That's not for me to say. You know what I mean? That's for Mark to say. And in Mark's estimation, they could have used 30 more minutes of Mark. So, you know what I mean? And Mark is Mark. If you know Mark is a very confident person. He is somebody who is very much sure of himself, and so but that's the deal he set with the owner. So that's none of my goddamn business. So that's what I would say. And Mark was very cool about it. He laughed, and he was, but basically he said the same thing as the owner did, which is, you can't do that, man. You can't do that. But he was, it was way cooler about it than I thought he would be. And anyone who knows Mark Maron would think that he might have been a dick about it, but he wasn't. He was actually, he understood like my frustration, and he was like, but still.
because that's probably something he would have done.
Exactly. He didn't say that, but that's exactly what I was like, kind of like, come on, man. You would sit there for 2 hours and wait for someone like you to do that? No.
Exactly.
But it doesn't matter, man. But I called myself out in the book. I'm being not being professional in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And but you pulled the Mark Maron on Mark Maron.
Oh, I wish I would have thought of that. I could have used that line.
Now, also with this, you sometimes I work, a lot of stuff at Governor's Comedy Club. I see a lot of comedians at all different levels. We have open mics there and stuff like that. And some open mic level comedians have been doing open mics for like 15 plus years. What do you say to those type of comics that just can't seem to grow or move or want to, for that matter? They're just happy with where they're at. Is there ever
hugging
a time?
That 5? They're hugging that 5.
Yeah. Is there ever a time to? I guess they could continue doing that forever, but was there ever a time for them to kind of like? After a while, does it just become a hobby, or what's your take on that for like long open mic level comics, like they've been doing for like over 10 years?
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it's broke, you might want to think about fixing it. And if you're at the same level year after year after year, you have to have an honest assessment, and that's what I think that, in terms of the 5 tools that a comedian has to have. That's your director. Your director has to have a comedy ears. You got to listen to what's happening. You got to hear that I'm peeking out at a certain place, and I'm not expanding what's happening. Well, it's probably because you're hugging your 5 minutes because you found 5 minutes that happens to work, but everybody's sick of your 5 minutes. And we can tell that you're too afraid to try new stuff because it's not working. And that's because you might not know the methodology of how to write a joke. And so that's where someone like that I would recommend, not if not my book, a book on comedy, where you begin to say, well, what is it that I'm doing? Maybe I don't understand the different 36 heightening devices, and I'm only stuck on using 1 or 2 of them. And when you expose someone like that to the other possibilities, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that I could do all these other things. I didn't know that that's what these other comics were doing. I didn't know, but the real thing though, Don, is they typically, those guys don't have a comedy lens, a real clear comedy lens. And that's the first thing I would say to a guy like that. I would say, you don't know who you are. That's the problem. You are what I call a corner quipper. A corner quipper is someone who's a lensless floating soul. It's the dad joke guy. It's the punny girl. It's somebody who's unclear of who they are. So they're making funny jokes, but they're not they're not relatable. They're not memorable. Like for instance, the premise about my teen daughter oversleeps on the weekend. A corner quipper might do a joke like, did you know that snails can sleep for 3 days at a time? Teen snails even longer. Right? Ha ha ha. Like it's a kind of a pun kind of, but that joke is it has nothing to do with me, Mike Lucas. So like you wouldn't remember me based on that joke.
Right.
And so it's a corner quipper kind of joke. And that's what a lot of these open micers that are doing their 5 over and over again, they found 5 minutes that happen to work one, and a lot of times that 5 doesn't even work all the time consistently, and that's the problem. And so I would say to them, you need to begin to do a journey into yourself and to find out who are you on stage as a comedian, find out the one bit of yours that represents that the best, and then begin to use that to reverse engineer other jokes from that.
Beautiful. And the another thing on that same kind of topic is when you're around for a long time doing stand up and you start to see comedians, whether they're younger or newer or whatever, but they start to pass you up. They start to get better opportunities. What do you say to that comic who's seeing them who's getting passed, and how does he stay focused? And any advice for that guy or girl?
Well, it's not saying as much about them as it's saying about whoever is passing them up too. Like I had, who middled for me? Frank Caliendo middled for me for a couple of times. And
wow.
do you ever try to follow Frank Caliendo? Do you ever try to follow the Seinfeld cast on acid?
Why do my fingers look like little people? Who are these people? What are they doing? They talk to each other.
It's not fun. It's not fun. You know who middled for me? Nick Swartzen.
Wow.
Nick Swartzen middle for me. So do you ever try to follow Nick Swartzen?
I always think it would suck to be attracted to animals. I want to go out on a limb on that one too. We're covering a lot of racy ground tonight. Being single, it's weird. Animals, don't want to date them.
So I was like, be my guest, go headline, please. My God, stop middling and making me work so hard. And both of those guys are really great guys. They're incredibly funny in both in their own different ways. But I would say to a person like that, are you headlining in a way that you're happy with? Are you a person who understands your lens and who has a plan? Do you have a plan? Are your 5 tools in place? Do you know what your business plan is? Do you have an idea of what a picture? That was the other thing, Don, when we talk about my career that stalled at that sort of right before you become famous level. I didn't have a plan of what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't know I wanted to be a writer at that time. I thought I was just totally a performer, and I couldn't visualize what I wanted. Well, that's what a lot of these guys aren't able to do, is say, this is what I am picture myself being, and then I'm just going to become that. You have to know what that is, and a lot of those guys are unaware of that. So that's something that you got to go on a journey to figure out, what is it that I want? Why is it that these people are passing me by? Because typically they know what they want. They're going for it. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. And so, like that person that everyone's passing you by, you're doing something right, because you're headlining, and they're middling and passing you by, or you're middling and they're opening and passing you by. So you're doing something right, but you're not doing it fully right. Your five tools aren't solid yet. So maybe you need to get a bigger following on the social media platforms. Maybe the people that are passing you by are a bigger draw. And what we have to realize is that comedy is a business, and these comedy clubs stay open because people come in through their doors and buy 2 drink minimums and 2 item minimums. And if you're not bringing people in, then that might be the only reason. You might be just as funny as any of those people, but you refuse to do the social media stuff, or you refuse to have an email list. That's another thing with the fifth tool. I'm holding up the 5 tools in case you can't remember the number 5. I just realized I'm doing that. But you might not understand how to get a mailing list together. Who taught me, the first guy to taught me about a mailing list was James Gregory, the funniest man in America. I don't know if you know James, but he was he used to do a mailing list by paper. Like, he would have index cards and put it on the tables, right?
Wow.
And then he was like, Mark, if he told people, like, if you just do enough work, if the same work as a shift worker at 7-Eleven and put that kind of work on your fifth tool as a business person, then you would excel way further than a lot of these guys that sit around and get high all day and play video games.
Exactly.
So, I would examine that part of it, and a lot of it's luck, Don. As you know, a lot of it's luck, man. A lot of it is being in the right place at the right time. I happen to get, some festivals because I happen to have a manager that happened to be in with the Just for Laughs comedy festival. So I got that, and that got me some stuff, but that was luck. And I was just as funny a year before that, before I got that manager, as I was when I got the thing. But it just happened to be seen by the right people.
Yeah, and like you said, it is a lot of, opportunities are always there. You got to be ready to seize it and have everything prepared. And I love the whole 5 tools because it is 5 different hats that each comedian generally has to wear. And now with you now, so you kind of made it almost the top of the mountain in comedy. Started writing books. Books are huge success. Now you're getting back out there. For you, what's the goals this time around?
Well, I'm at the age now where I don't know if I could travel around. Staying at a comedy condo would be the worst nightmare of my life. Don't eat the mayo. Don't eat the mayo. Don't eat the goddamn condiment in the condo. We learned that lesson at the very beginning. My goal now is I have a collective goal with the Dallas Comedy Club. We're trying to make Dallas the hub of the Southern comedy world. And right now, the Dallas Comedy Club has an improv side to it, and it has a stand-up side to it. And I do both of those things. As you mentioned, I worked with Second City. Yeah. I was on their main stage in Chicago as an understudy with Rachel Dratch and Tina Fey and Kevin Dorff and Scott Adsit, and just blown away by their brilliance and just trying to keep up, on stage with them when I filled in for Jim Zulovic, rest his soul. And I didn't fill in because he passed away, but he's passed away since.
Right.
That's a great understudy gig. The guy died, and I'm in. And I was also in Vegas. I did the Flamingo with Jason Sudeikis and Kay Cannon. We were all out there doing, and Mick Napier was directing, and we did the show there for a year. So Dallas Comedy Club has that whole improv side to it. In fact, I auditioned for and made their long form improv team. So I'm actually performing for free on the improv. In fact, I'm paying our coach to be on the improv team. But that's how hungry I am to get back on stage. And so my goal right now is to be a really great instructor for them, to sell more books, and to really make the Dallas Comedy Club a real hub of comedy.
Very cool, and good luck with that. I love Dallas. I might actually be going to Dallas for my day job in a couple of weeks, so to do something with stuff with the Dallas Stars. So hopefully I can make a stop over there at the club and check out some comedy.
It's an interesting theater. It's a black box theater, so it's not going to attract all the big names. That's going to be the Improv in Fort Worth, it's or in Addison, I think. And that's the brand name kind of a thing. What we offer is this really sort of homespun club that's sort of grassroots. And so when you go there, you're always going to see a really great show. You just might not necessarily know who the people are. They might be like like an internet sensation kind of coming in on this level. And but truthfully, the clubs right now, you're going to get to see guys and girls at a certain level, but then they go do theaters once they get big. So you got to catch them at the clubs when they're nobody yet. And that's what at the Dallas Comedy Club, a lot of these people are up and comers that we're featuring. So it's a great opportunity to see these people that are going to be tomorrow's stars.
Right on. And yeah, I'm a big advocate for supporting the local scene as well. So people in Dallas, should definitely go out there, support the local comedy club scene, as every city and town should, with
right.
People
forget what a great time it is to bring a date out. You don't have to do any of the talking. You get to get all these jokes told to you, and then the rest of the evening you get to call back on the comedian's brilliant material with this date, and you get to seem like you're the funny guy, or the funny girl. So it's a great time to spend with somebody, and let's be honest. One of my jokes is I say that comedians, our job is to make you laugh, but our job is also to help you forget, and to forget your problems, to forget your shitty job. And then the joke is I go into the shitty job and I just start to really emphasize how shitty their job is and how have to go there every day, and that they have to wake up in the morning, next morning probably, and then their boss is a jerk, and then they didn't get the advancement. But we're not going to talk about any of that, not starting now.
Then 9 minutes later, my alarm clock chimes in. Get your ass out of bed. You gotta go to work and you hate your job.
But that's what our job is. We're the court jester. We deliver the news so that we don't get our heads chopped off, and we deliver the bad news. And so that job is always going to be available to anybody who's got the guts and the balls to do it. And you have to have the 5 tools to do it. But if you got those and you're aware of what they are and you're working on them, then you're going to improve in that world.
Right on, man. The last thing is I just wanted to see if you had a top 5 comedians. And I have a top 5. If you can go first, or I can go first, or whatever.
Let's see. On top of my list, I love Bill Burr, is one of my favorites. I love Louis C.K., one of my favorites. Brian Regan, one of my favorites. And then I got to go classic. Oh God, it's like Chris Rock is like, I saw him live in New York at the Comedy Store. I think it was there. No, I can't remember. It was it was the New York Comedy Club up on the upper
Comedy Cellar?
No, it was up Upper West Side, I think. Or maybe it was Upper East Side. I can't remember. It was when I was living in Brooklyn. And I watched him work, and then I saw him do a special off the material that he worked on. And I was just I saw a brilliant man just bring his stuff to life. And then let's see, I got to throw a woman in there because it's only fair. My favorite woman comedian would be Paula Poundstone. She's just the way she works a crowd, and the way she takes 3 different people at least, and then by the end of the show, all 3 of them know each other, and the bits all come together, and it's just like this. And I saw Paula Poundstone on stage at Bonkers Comedy Club in Orlando, Florida, when I was first starting out, and a woman at the front of the showroom passed out, just collapsed onto the stage. And it was such a scary moment because everyone thought she was dead. And Paula Poundstone at first was like, didn't know what to do. And then when Paula saw that she was alive and that she was okay, Paula began to narrate all of it as the ambulance came. And so she did this whole situation about, you're back to Earth, welcome back, my little astronaut or whatever she did. And the audience gave her a standing ovation at the end of that because she made an uncomfortable situation actually funny and without disrespecting the person who turns out was just dehydrated.
Wow. Yeah, Paula Poundstone's awesome. One of like when I was, I've been loving comedy my whole life, but one of the times I was literally in tears, crying, laughing was the first time I saw the Pop-Tart bit that she does.
This is what happens to me. I open the first pouch and I eat one tart and I enjoy it very much, as naturally I would. And then I feel, well, I have to eat the second one or it will go stale. Well, now I've eaten two and it's no longer just a snack, it's a meal. I figure I may as well eat two more.
I remember being like belly laughing, like at that particular time.
Might as well just eat that last one. I mean, what are you doing? Yeah, are we just fooling ourselves?
It's just so genius. She's definitely one of the greats.
And you could add Ellen DeGeneres onto that too, as far as say what you want about her as a talk show host, but as a comedian, I had the biggest crush on her. I didn't know she preferred women over men, but I always wanted to date her. I always thought she was gorgeous, and I thought she was hilarious. And I was like, she's got everything a man would want, except for one thing: the desire for
man.
Damn it.
Her phone call to God, still legendary.
Yeah.
Probably one of her most classic bit, I would say.
Yeah, hi, God, it's Ellen. Ellen, DeGeneres. DeGeneres. What's so funny? No, I never thought of that. It does sound like that, doesn't it? Yeah, I get it.
But yeah, she's a great comedian. She just has a new special out now, trying to make a comeback in the stand-up. So hope she does well.
I wish her the best. I think she's such a misunderstood person and brilliant, just a really brilliant just so unique. Like her bits are so fun, just so different, and we need that, and especially like and I don't want to disparage any women comedians because there's so many great, fantastic women comedians. Wanda Sykes comes to mind.
No, she's
Sarah
brilliant.
Silverman comes to mind.
Yeah.
And just so many real great original voices. And the problem with any like stereotype of a person, like a fat person or a black person or a woman or a bald guy, we go with stereotypes and they're not unoriginal. And when you have a good lens, all that gets thrown away. And that's what I love about it is each one of those comedians that we mentioned, that I mentioned, all have a really unique and solid lens, and it keeps them from looking typical. Who are your favorite five?
So my five, I think we had a couple of the same ones. I think Louis C.K. is genius.
Yeah.
Brilliant as comedic mind, from everything from his stand-up to his television show. Louis was just brilliant.
Fantastic actor. You very rarely see a comedian who can make the jump to acting, and he was one of them.
He's so great because he's vulnerable in his acting too, and that's what came through with Louis. And I think it was just so honest, and I was very inspired by Louis especially, and I've been doing a series of like short films about comedians, and it's kind of Louis-esque, but unintentionally. And then I watched it back and go, damn, this is very much
this could have been another episode.
Yeah, I'm like, what am I doing here? I got to evaluate. I got to go through my 5 steps and see what's going on here. The other one is again, these are like controversial, and I think comedy and controversy go hand in hand. So Chappelle would be on that list.
I would have to do 10, and he would be on that list.
Yeah, because he's another kind of genius, and storyteller. The vocabulary he uses, the word choices, how he can go in and out of. I call him 50-cent words if you use the big vocabulary words, and then he can go from that to 2-cent words and just kind of, but make it all cohesive and make sense and work. Chris Rock is on that list.
Yeah.
I think would bring the pain. Chris Rock changed the game of how comedians were like, oh, we could do that. I didn't know we could do that.
If OJ drove a bus, he wouldn't even be OJ. He'd be Orenthal, the bus driving murderer.
Isn't it something when a comedian takes the art form and bends it in a way where you're like, oh, I never saw. You know who did that for me was Eddie Strange. I don't know if you know Eddie Strange.
Oh yeah.
You people are looking at me like my house has no mirrors. Hey! This is the way I look, so get over it, okay? I've gotten used to it, now it's your turn.
Brilliant, man. And I watched him in Orlando when I was first starting out, and he did a bit where he turned the stage into the recreational vehicle that he grew up traveling in with his family. And so you could see the whole thing. You could see the front where he was driving. You could see where he was sleeping. You could see the shitter. You could see the living area. And it was all just a comedy stage, but it was all his imagination. And after I said the exact same thing you just said, I was like, what? You could do that? I didn't know you're allowed.
It's just so awesome when those portholes get opened up and you know.
That's why you have to watch the brilliant comics. You have to. It's like a writer has to read and a comedian has to watch comedy. In fact, I'm teaching a workshop in December at the Dallas Comedy Club called "How Comedians Watch Comedy," and it teaches you how to not just watch a comedy to laugh, but also how to break it down into all the joke elements, and so you can begin to see the methodology of what that comedian did to get their laugh, including the misdirection.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and then the other one was Dave Attell, who we mentioned. I think and then I always got to throw Carlin on the list. George Carlin,
of course,
the GOAT. One of the greats, and obviously Pryor and Dick Gregory and all the kind of
Lenny
forefathers.
Bruce,
Lenny Bruce.
Godfather of observational comedy.
Yeah, Mort Saul, all those guys. You got to.
Yeah, I love all of that stuff, man. I for a while I listened to Lenny Bruce. I was just like illegally downloading all of his stuff and just listening to it, and it's amazing. Like it's like brilliant, and then it was lawsuit, and then it
then was stayed on that,
and then he just stayed on that, and it was like, Ray, But then you listen to it in retrospect, and you can see the brilliance in his comedy, even when he's talking about that dry stuff,
Yeah, like in that time when he was defending himself all the time, when he was saying, he's like, now I'm not defending my act, I'm defending the bailiff who's doing my act.
Exactly. And he's doing a poor job of it, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I got to defend this guy doing a bad take on my act.
Right.
That's funny. Hilarious. But yeah, I mean,
I agree with all those. If I redid my list, I would include all those. In my list of 5 would have 30 of those people in it.
Comedy's a beautiful thing, and it's an American thing that I think it was Mark Twain or Artemis Ward and all those guys created it back in the day, and the stand up as we know it. But I love it. It's a phenomenon. I think every generation needs their guys to kind of speak the truth, so to speak. I look at them as truth tellers. Even observational comics like Seinfeld, he's telling you his truth through that,
It's all the subtext of what they're talking about. He's talking about Mitch Hedberg's talking about donuts, but he's really talking about corporate greed.
Exactly.
I bought a donut and they gave me a receipt for the donut. I don't need a receipt for a donut. I'll just give you the money. You give me the donut. And the transaction. We don't need to bring ink and paper into this. I just cannot imagine a scenario where I'd have to prove that I bought a donut.
Dude, he's like, what was the one with the family? He's at the restaurant and they're like, Miller's are next, and then.
But what happened to the Millers?
Yeah, what happened?
There's a missing family, and we can't go about our business. I mean, and it just even us retelling it is funny, and that's not even like entering into Mitch Hedberg's delivery. The receipt for the donut was just every time.
Oh yeah,
Now I
Classic.
get a donut, I think of Mitch, you know. I think of God, like how brilliant he was and just how outside the box he could think. You know, he's like a Stephen Wright, but for like the modern times, you know.
Yeah. And,
Wow. Or
and
whatever the modern times was for Mitch, you know.
yeah, exactly.
90s.
But yeah, that's why I love comedy. I love that I sometimes it's complex, but sometimes it's simple. But yet it's simplistic complexities. There's all kind like, and that's why I love books like yours to kind of bring it all back. And I love to kind of learn from the all of this stuff because, like I said before, you're always learning. There's always new things to learn. I'm enjoying this book a lot. Everyone should go out and get it. You can go to funnymuscle.com or on Amazon
Or
and
Barnes
get
and Noble, guys. Barnes and Noble, don't forget them. If you don't like Amazon, if you're saying F Amazon, you can go to my website, funnymuscle.com, or Barnes and Noble and get them there. And there's the paperback, there's the Kindle, and there's also the audio version of the first two books. That one you're holding doesn't have the audio yet. I'm still in the middle of recording it. It's
nice.
harder to record audio than you would think. Because you got to read the words and you got to make them sound real, and then you got to mess up and go, and then you got to get rid of that because Audible doesn't like that.
Yeah. They don't want any F-bombs in the if it's not written already in there.
They get a little particular sometimes about that.
Mike, this has been such a pleasure, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Like I said, I'm hoping I'm in Dallas and I can catch up with you. But if you're ever on Long Island, please come on out. We'd love to have you here at Governor's Comedy Club. And also, I'd love to get you back on the show to talk comedy because I just could talk comedy all day.
I could too, man. I'm a nerd for this stuff. I geek out on it. So thank you, Don. I appreciate you hunting me down and finding me.
Yeah, and everybody check it out, funnymuscle.com. Where can they find you?
You can find me at the Dallas Comedy Club. Come on in town and check me out. I do sets there all the time, and I teach classes there. And my next class is sold out, but I'll be doing some in January. So come on in then.
Awesome. Mike Lukas, everyone.
Woo! Insert other applause here.
There it is.
Oh my God, good job. Oh, your editor's wonderful. Oh, that's you? Oh,
Yeah.
how about that?